Hello everyone, welcome back again to another episode of Don't Blunder Endgame series. This time another endgame technique we all know as related squares. This is equally important because it adds layers to every endgame knowledge that we know and help you speed up the process of making the right decision. Now this training or video is really to pragmatize that this game is a game of squares, not just some pieces running around the board. We'll go through very quickly what it really means, but I really need us to appreciate this puzzle for a bit, pertaining to the stuff that we'll look at later on. Go on, white to move, and win. Try to play it out, set it out on the board, and try to solve it. But to get things started, we can go all the way back to the stuff that we already understand. We understand that if black plays king to c5 in this puzzle, black will have this kind of opposition where you can stop the king to advance any further. However, in this particular position only, because these pawns are connected past pawns, the case will be a bit different. Now the general theme will be to bring this king back to the 6, 7, 8 rank to support this little pawn to become a queen. However, if you notice, black is in time to stop that from happening. If you go king to d3, he goes king d5, goes king to e3, then go king to e5. These are known as related square. Now, if white places king to d3, black has to be in poise to place his king on to d5. These are known as related square because if not, the white king will march up forward to c4 and c5, and that will be over for black. These are known as related square. For example, let's move back this position back to this position. Again, it's the same thing. If white goes to c3, black has to be in poise to bring his king to c5 as well. And so already as you can see, these are related square pertaining to this position. For example, if white king places itself on d2 where it controls d3 and e3, black king will have to be placed on d6 where again it controls d5 and e5. So that when white king marches up to e3, now we have again king to e5 and hey, black maintains that position. So of course we can also say that d2 and d6 in a particular position are related squares. However, if you go back to this position, how far can black go actually, right? So if white goes king d3, we establish that we can go king d5 black and king to e3, king to e5. But now as white, we can go king to f3. Now for black, black cannot go king to f5. This is not the related square for black in this position. Because just as I've drawn it on the board, the pawn will actually promote and the king will not be in time to stop that one. These are basically the benefit of passed pawns, but what if you have a split pawns like the one I show you at the start of the video? You want to take a pause and try to figure out on your own? I'll give you a couple of seconds. Now we can establish in this position that the related square is c5 and c7. Whenever white plays king to c5, black has to answer with king to c7, again as to prevent white from marching up the board and supporting his pawn to promote. Additionally, if king to d5, black has to be in tune to play king to c8, so that after king to d6, which the white king will eventually go into, then king to d8, preventing white from having any access to promote this pawn. And if king to e6, we're just going to play king to c7. So e6 and c7 is another related square. Of course, the king can't march up further because he'll lose the pawn, so king back to d5 has to be played. But then black can just go back to filling up that related square puzzle again with king to c8. And when white plays king to c5, black is back to filling up the related squares again with king to c7. And everything is back to square one. But before we really move on to accept the draw from black, try to count the egg before it really hatches. This time it's related square. For example, in this position, we only check out the move that really advances and not only the one that retreats. So is there any way that we can actually combine that? For example, if white plays king to d5, black has to play king to c8. But now it's really the perfect time to play king to c4 because the pawn on c6 is no longer threatened. However, the question is, what does this really change, right? Again, on c4 we have to establish which one is related square for black. On c4, the king strives to go to c5 and also d5. When the king comes to c5, black must be in poise to play king to c7. And the only square that he can do that on is to play the king back to b8 and or d8. Otherwise, if black plays king to c7, then king to c5, this is already winning for white. Black in the next turn has to step away, and here he comes with the white king on the 6 and 7 ranked. Hopefully you understand that. So the related square for the black king is to play king to d8 and also king to b8 to play king to c7, the next move if white plays king to c5. However, white also has the possibility of going king to d5. Of course, if white plays king to c5, black's already in poise to play king to c8, so this won't work again for white. And black will be able to defend this way. So hopefully you understand a bit about the related square, but what do we do in this position to actually solve it for white? Now as we've discussed, that the king on c4 has a related square of d8, and b8. But what if our king goes to d4? Again, our king on d4 fulfills the duty of what the king on c4 will do. It is the fact that it controls the c5 square and also the d5 square again. And so by right, black will have to be able to move his king to d8 or b8. But now black's king is already on b8. It cannot jump to d8 on one move, and so it has to settle on c7 and also on c8. But this, by the law of related square, is already losing for black. So already by establishing this kind of information in your head, you can really speed up the process of decision making that this is actually winning for white. And it's not very difficult to see in this position. White just plays king to d5, because after king to d8 we get king to d6. We again fulfill the opposition for white. We again fulfill the the position for related squares. And so this is actually winning for white. Black has to step away and will be able to get in. Obviously, if he steps this way as well, then we play c7. He has no opposition, he will lose this game. And so it happens that it's possible for two particular different squares to have the same related square. And so if you master this technique, you'll be able to win games very quickly and also without difficulty in the future. Just to add, if white plays king to d5 and black plays king to c7, hoping that he can stop the king from coming in this direction, then of course king to c5, again we fulfill the related square for white, and this will be a winning endgame for white. Very easy endgame for white, should I say, because the king has to step away and the white king will be able to get in. Now this is basically the last puzzle that we're going to look at today. Don't want to bog down your time too much with a lot of puzzles. Hopefully you can do some of that on your own as well. But this particular position, as the one we've seen before, has a position where it's split pawn for white and one pawn that is blocking for black. So hopefully by now you can very quickly see by the way, if you play king c3 in this position, then I'm going to go king to a4, hoping to bring this pawn to my pocket. Also to contain this pawn from really advancing. So for example, if we play king to d3, let's say, then king to b4. This is again another related square. We talk about this many times in our position and in our playlist as well, is that you can't really be the one who touches the pawn first, because by the time black approaches this pawn, you will have to move away, and it's impossible basically to move to c3 and or to d4, and so you have to move away and you'll be losing this pawn and you lose this game. And so hopefully we know that king to d3 and king to b4 are related squares, and so if not that, what does white play anyway, yes? Well, following the last example, white can really place king to a3. Now this serves a purpose to kick back the black king to b6 or to a6. Well, black has to move anyway, he can't move a pawn, yes? So moving back the king back to a6 or to b6 is really key for white to win. Now how does white continue, yes? Now if white plays king to b3 again, then king to a5, this goes back to square one, so this is basically useless. But now following the first example as well, we can retreat our king back to b2. Now the idea is if black wants to advance to only square, which is a5, now we have king to b3. Again, we fulfill the related squares, and black will have to be pushed back to either b6 or a6 again. But already we're making progress, yes? But again, how do you continue? And we understand the plan for black will be to play king to a5, king to a4, and play king to b4 in 3 moves. And so when black gets the king to b4 to attack the pawn on c4, white has to insert a move, play king to d3 to support his pawn on c4 from falling, and also to just, march up the king so they can promote these pawns. And so again, if you go king c3, he goes king to a5. Then he just, fulfill basic related squares again. We can't let him do that. We have to fill the related squares on our own. And so we have to be the one who fulfills related squares, not our opponent. If you give our opponent to fulfill the related squares, then he's in time to draw or to win the game. So what do we really do then? We can't play king to a3, because after king to a5 goes back to square one. But say if white plays king to c3 and black plays king to a5. The question is, how do you get to d3 just after he gets to b4? And there's no better way to answer this by playing a tempo losing move, and that is king to d2. So after king to b4, voila, you get your king to d3, and the black king will have to move, and you'll be in time to just promote this pawn. It will be incorrect to play king to c2 because this loses too much tempo. Now after king to a4, again you can't go to d3 because he goes b4 and you'll be losing the pawn on c4 because he fills up that related square. But if you go d2 to run your king to basically pick up this pawn, then black has king to a3. In which after king to e3, he plays king to a2, king d5, king b3, king d5. Again, he has the second touch of the pawn with king to c3. White has to move the king somewhere else, and if he goes somewhere else, then he loses the pawn on c4. This will be a draw. worse is losing for white. So the best move here is king to d2, where after king to a4, you're in time to run for the pawn. And in this position, you'll be the one who picks up the pawn first and run the pawn to promote. King to c3 isn't the only way to win though. You can definitely play a tempo losing move first, like king to c2, where after king to a5, we get to d2, and then again we fulfill the same basic related squares, and we're just on track of winning with the same position that we saw just now. And so yeah, these are really basically the puzzles that I want to talk about. I have one puzzle that I really would like you to try with, and this puzzle really reminds me of the game that is played between Geary and Sam Shankland in Terrestrial Masters in 2019, where black just resigns in a drawn position. This is not quite the same, but this is basically the good practice to get into feel which one is winning, which one is actually losing. And so have fun, try it out, and if you learn something, I'll appreciate it if you click the like button, and I'll see you very soon. Thanks for watching.